The Blue Jewel.
Chapter 7. Part 8. When the two young women woke up, the mercenaries had already disappeared. The innkeeper informed them that they had paid for their room and theirs for at least 2 more nights, so Arian was sure that he would see them again at least 1 more night. The young woman went out into the street. She knew where she had to go. The inn loaf had recommended to Nilam was the only clue she had. If it didn't work, he could always go to the White Robe's headquarters or to the Wizards' Council itself to report his case. Loaf's words still echoed in his head, river of wine, and Bippity the Fat. He asked the innkeeper about the situation of that inn. It turned out that it was not far away, going straight on the 2nd street on the right. Arian went out with Vanus to the premises. The young woman at first wanted to go alone, but the Kendeli did not give in. She even threatened to make herself invisible. In that scenario, Arian accepted that he went with her. They made their way slowly through the crowded streets. At this time they were at the beginning of the school year and many new apprentices arrived in Tripulia with hopes of becoming magicians, but more than half would fail. Most of them ended up as Magins. A Magin was a person who had studied magic but had not completed them. What in ancient times was a cause of dishonor and many committed suicide was now a very profitable way of life for 2 reasons. The Magins could use weapons, something that magicians were forbidden to do, and combine it with the use of magic. A magician could not break that law, but Magins were not magicians in the strict sense. By paying the council gave the applicant permission to use magic. It had its limitations, since spells had to be simple, but it was a very lax rule. There were quite diligent Magins who served as bodyguards and mercenaries. In fact, they were the security force of the Council of Mags. They were dedicated to searching for mags convicted of necromancy, and of some order, although this was unofficial. Others opted to make potions of all kinds or act as healers. The few who were dedicated to the dark but lucrative world of necromancy and black magic, they were referred to as Black Magins. For someone as strict as Kush, the existence of the Magins was the height of Tripulia's degeneration. Fortunately, de Boek hated the Magins. He had none at his service, only 3 mags. However, even to be a master, you had to study a lot, not just talent. Despite the commotion, it didn't take long for him to find the inn. The sign was quite large and with golden letters already worn by the passage of time, the River of Wine. It was a shabby and unkempt place, the worst of all the ones he had visited during his trip. The Tavern of Ordoni compared to this place was a palace. The windows were dirty, greasy and moldy. The place did not have a door, so the entrance appeared in front of them, inviting them to enter into a very disconcerting gloom. Arian entered hesitantly. It was a large place with 2 floors. As usual, the ground floor was used as a tavern and the 2nd floor was an inn. The tavern had seen better days, no doubt, with a long wooden bar behind which stood an obese and bald tavern keeper who stared at a number of round tables irregularly placed in the room, around each of them many stools. The clientele must have been very numerous, but not at that moment. I only had 2 customers whispering to each other at one of the tables in the back. The innkeeper gave a look of disbelief towards Arian. It was not at all usual to see a young woman enter this place unaccompanied. He stopped cleaning the bar with a huge dirty black rag. "Good morning." Arian greeted politely. "That depends on who it is for." "Are you Bippity?" "Yes, that's my name." The innkeeper didn't seem very willing to converse. His gaze wandered to his customers in the background who seemed to be too busy with their affairs. "I am looking for a young apprentice magician. I arrive recommended by Loaf, the one-eyed, an old friend of his. He came from the north and his name is Nilam. Are you here, please?" The innkeeper became much more annoyed and spat on the ground. "That is no longer here." The news hit Arian like a bucket of cold water. It was the only hope of finding his brother. "I understand. Do you know in what order you study magic?" "That bum. A student of magic. He is not even good for a man who prepares manure. Forgive me, but that scoundrel lost the desire to be a magician as soon as he saw the terrible trials he had to undergo. A new disappointment, all the clues she had seemed to be useless. Nilam doesn't study magic. That gulf, he dropped out of school a few months later. He did study something, he spent all the gold he had on parties and living the high life with his actor friends. He was working here, if that can be called working. Nilam had not left a fond memory in Bipidi's memory. Sleep the monkey and drink my best beer on the sly, until one day I got fed up with his farts and kicked him out. I owed Loaf some favors, but not so many, and he still owes me gold. Know if Nilam is still in Tripulia. Yes, I think so. He lives next to those bums like him. They say they're artists, but they're just bottle huggers. Now he's an artist too. A word of advice, don't get together with that guy. The only thing they will get out of you is all the gold you have to spend on your vices. The innkeeper spoke in good faith, but Arian had to see his brother. He's my brother and I must see him, it's urgent. Do you know where you are? Bipidi raised one of his eyebrows. Nilam's sister. He thought that she was one of his lovers scorned or swindled by the young man in one of his many love affairs. She had a great talent for such tasks. Those damned ones are in the north of the city. There is a wasteland outside the walls where a kind of fair is located. Those who have nothing else to do but waste time laughing at graces and numbers come. They call themselves the merry actors of the wasteland. Now they must be dozing off after a busy night. But trust me, your brother will only look for trouble for you. Arian smiled and as payment for his services gave the innkeeper a gold coin for the information. Don't worry, he already gave them to me even before he joined that troupe of actors. She was furious. She had risked everything for a bum. Nilam was never a hard worker, but she had always finished everything she started. It is true that in Caesarea there were not all the distractions that existed in Tripulia, or it was the image she had of Nilam and not the real one. Arian was a sea of doubts, but there was only one person who could clear them up, his brother.